Welcome in to an Inside Carolina special season preview. Today is 2026 men's lacrosse with head coach Joe Breschi. Joe, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you guys are ramping up for the season, coming faster than it seems, and some weather in the area. But just overall going into this year, and I'll go back after this first question. But going into this year, what are your feelings on this team? Looking at your returnees, you have a lot of talented players coming back, and given the way college sports is now, across all the sports, really, it's tough to retain everybody. You seem like you've done a good job getting that done going into 26.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, and also the University of North Carolina sells itself still, regardless of the portal and the shared revenue and things of that nature. So we're fortunate that so many young men just love the experience here at North Carolina, whether it's the university or the athletic department or our team program and the family they're a part of. So I think ultimately the experience that they're having is number one. I think, as we get started coming off of last year's shared ACC championship and in the NCAA tournament and so forth, I thought we garnered a lot of experience for our kind of older guys. They were younger. Now when they go to junior, senior, they become older. And then an influx of younger guys that are really helping kind of build the depth, build the chemistry, those sorts of things that are kind of coming into the fold. So a really good mix of older guys, younger guys, and some great team leadership by the players.
All right. Now I'm going to come back to that, but let's go back to the beginning. When I do the interviews, I go back and I search everything I can to find past interviews. And I found Right Manny with you back in the day around the time of the 16 national championship and all that. And one I saw with you and Jen Levy. And I thought it was fascinating, the mix there, the family atmosphere there. Can you just talk about, you've been at Carolina for 18 years and one of the longest tenured coaches there. Of course, Coach Levy's got you on that end, but can you talk about that side of the Carolina family, the Olympic sports side? I don't think we talk enough about the success that you guys have and the community that the Olympic sports and specifically the lacrosse teams have. Can you just speak to that aspect of it in your time at Carolina? It's very important, and it needs to be told more than it is.
Well, fortunate for me, I'll go back to when I played and graduated here in 1990 and was able to coach in 91, 92 when you were here. And we won a national championship in 91. But Willie Scroggs was the head coach, and he's a Hall of Famer. And he really instilled the family atmosphere for us. And I thought, as a student athlete, it just meant so much to me to be a part of that. And, as you kind of go through the profession as a coach, you're pulling in different things. And that's what made Carolina so special. And Coach Scroggs, yes, he was a great coach, but I think he just brought everybody along. So over my time coaching, whether it was Carolina as an assistant or Brown University or head coach at Ohio State before coming back to Carolina, and then having a chance to be around Jenny Levy and all the Olympic sports here, it's just been nothing short of extraordinary. And, what I mean by that is there's so many examples from, Larry Fedora to Mac Brown and now Bill Belichick and Roy Williams, who had my daughter on the court because she was wearing a Midnight Madness T-shirt, and he saw her wearing it and said, next year, this was in 2016. Next year, I'm going to have you on the court with me. And they win it in 17, and they're hanging the banner. And I'm like, oh, no, does he remember what he promised my daughter? And sure enough, he had her on the court, and it was like the greatest experience. My daughter still talks about it to this day, 10 years later. And then there's Jenny Levy and Dan Levy, who played with me. I coached them also. He graduated in 93. Become really good friends with them. And Jenny, I actually have coached both of her sons. Ryan graduated a year ago. He was one of the captains for us, and Alec is now a junior for us. So, you talk about the the family atmosphere here and how important it is to UNC and athletics. And I give Bubba Cunningham and Steve coming in this year just a ton of credit with kind of in a big university, large university with a lot of moving parts in college athletics to continue to keep this family atmosphere going is pretty impressive.
Indeed. It is the evolution of college sports, especially in the last 5 years. How does that really impact your program? I think that's another thing that everybody sees the transfer portal. They think college basketball, they think college football, baseball to a certain extent. How does it affect the Olympic sports that are not as highly publicized, but like I've said before, and like you'd agree with me, have been extremely successful at Carolina? What's the impact with the new, quote unquote, new era in college sports for you guys?
Well, I think I give a ton of credit just to go back to the administration and Bubba and his executive committee for really keeping Olympic sports at the forefront. With 28 sports and one of the largest in the ACC. I said one of the largest. We used to be the largest till we added Stanford and Cal and so forth. But just keeping us so valuable, like the student athletes feel that, right? They feel when they are valued as contributors, and the success of the Olympic sports has always been from Ants Endurance to women's lacrosse to Karen Shelton in field hockey and now Aaron Matson. I mean, you look at the success of the Olympic sports, it's easy to kind of push them aside and say, hey, we got to sink our teeth into football and basketball, which we are, but also the importance of, baseball and women's basketball and all the other Olympic sports that are major contributors and winners. And I think that's invaluable. For us, like I said at the beginning, North Carolina is a hard place to leave. Chapel Hill's that bubble, and it's an incredible experience for student athletes. So we don't necessarily have the individuals, I think, in Olympic sports in general that are chasing shared revenue per se. But we have athletes that love Carolina, love competing for the university, and love their teammates. And I think that's what makes this place pretty special. And it can't go without saying the importance of how the administration has treated the Olympic sports so well. So they know they're valued members of this athletic department.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's the wholesome, well, not wholesome, but it's the college experience that
Right.
we all remember back when we were there. And that's the Olympic sports side of it, keeps it like that. Because you're right. Now, I mean, I've asked several of your coaches, several of fellow coaches, and several players in the Olympic sports is, how do you feel about these other athletes making millions of dollars? And almost to a person, they say, look, that would be nice, but we're able to do what we do because of the money those big programs make for the university. Is that accurate? I mean, that's an accurate sentiment, isn't it?
100%. And I think one thing with Olympic sports, every student athlete, right, should value education. And, I know our Olympic sports and I know our student athletes. Little shout out to our team for being the top male GPA last year and again this fall. So we continue to attack the academics as well. And the education is just second to none at Carolina with the combination of athletics. So it's a really, really cool experience. And that's why you deal with less moving from Carolina into the portal somewhere else, I think, for Olympic sports here.
Yeah, so I was building off your philosophy. Family, we hit on that. Academics, you just hit on that. And that's impressive to be able to, that's one thing I've learned, having one that just graduated from Carolina, another one that's currently there, is the load that is on student athletes to do all you have to do to be in the sport, but also you still got to do your classwork and you still got to do all that. And then you got to find a way to have a college life as well. So it's impressive to see these young men and women do it. Now let's talk lacrosse. Tell me about the pressure, if at all, that you felt in 2016 to get it done, especially being surrounded by these other Olympic sports that were getting it done at the time.
Yeah.
At the ultimate level.
Well, I often say the pressure that comes with coaching is certainly there, but no one puts more pressure on than the coaches themselves. And I think that's what's, unique about this profession. But I also say with that pressure comes the extraordinary opportunity to impact 18 to 22-year-olds. And each season's different. Each year has its different leadership, its different chemistry in the locker room. Even when you drop 10 to graduation and bring in 10 more, it's a different dynamic. Sure, the core values, the standards are there, but the leadership is a little bit different, and guys are moving up the ladder in that leadership role. And ironically, we probably had a more talented team in 2015 than we had in 16. But the leadership was excellent, and Austin Pafani and Patrick Kelly and Jake Mathai and Mark Rizzo as captains. But just to see that team struggle early in the February, and then to kind of get it all together and just attack it the way they did and play without pressure, if you will, of no one expecting a team that's in the tournament, that's unseeded, and just played without the pressure and just played loose and free, and and we're able to come away with the win in the national championship. Now, one of the coolest experiences that there is that I don't think many have talked much about was the fact that men's and women's lacrosse were both in Philly. We were both in the same hotel. Obviously on different floors, but supporting each other really well. And just having seen them win on Saturday or on Friday, and then we won the semis on Saturday, and then we made a human tunnel out to the bus for them for their national championship, and then Jenny bypassing the charter flight home after they won it to bring their whole team to our championship game and win it, and to see both teams celebrating in the stands in Philly was just special. And I those memories are still talked about for those teams year in and year out, which is pretty special.
Yeah, that interview with you and Coach Levy was fantastic, talking about that. And I mean, what all has to go right for it to line up like that, for you guys to be in the same town, same hotel, like you said, and play on back-to-back days and win the national championship. Talking with Joe Breschi, head coach of men's lacrosse, talking a little 2026 season preview, but a little background just for folks that don't follow lacrosse as much. You probably should, because this is a talented bunch. Coach, speaking of the talent, how do you balance? I've watched a fair amount of lacrosse and women's lacrosse, and to me, to my lay eyes, it seems like a completely different sport. It's not as physical on the women's side, maybe. If I don't know if that's a fair statement or not, but it just, like I told you off the air, those guys that lived next to us back in the day were some of the toughest dudes, and that includes football players, some of the toughest dudes I've ever been around.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance technical skill, talent versus physicality that you need in the game when you're recruiting, when you're coaching it? What's the dynamic there? Because you need both.
You do.
But what do you lean to if you can't have exactly both?
Well, the beauty of University of North Carolina is, as I mentioned earlier, it sells itself a little bit. So we're immediately in that top 5%, 3 to 5% of the recruits. I'm fortunate, so fortunate to have John Thompson, offensive coordinator, Dave Petramala, defensive coordinator, Peter Murphy works with our face-off guys, and just terrific recruiters. And we all have an idea of what we're looking for. Two of them were former head coaches themselves, so they all understand the importance of toughness, playing with an edge, also playing disciplined and smart in the same vein. So we go pretty in depth when you're digging into the top 3 to 5% of recruits out there or prospects out there to really find the right guys that fit us. They're also good human beings. They're great students, all the above. You want that, but you also want them to flip the switch when they step on the field and play with that edge and fire and juice inside, where they play for each other. They play with heart. They play with that desire, and they're winners. So we really attack programs that have been successful as well in the high school ranks, because you want to bring in guys that know what it takes to win, and all the other pieces that come with it too. So it's a balance, but it's also, the unique thing for us as coaches. It's and this is what we battle with a pretty talented group of guys each year, is how hard do you push them while keeping them fresh on game day, so they're ready to fly around. So I think that's the biggest balance that the coaching staff and I go through, is just how do we keep them at a point where they're going to be flying around and playing as hard as they possibly can, throwing their body around and competing. But I give this group a lot of credit. We talk about how important communication is. These guys are coming in each week and saying how their bodies feel. How can we do this better? How can we do that better? And there's just great collaboration between staff and players.
It's a fascinating mix there. You're right. It's always great to have players that will tell you when they're not feeling perfect or not feeling great. Now, you want them to play through some of it, but if you're hurt, let me know. And that's one thing coaches always speak to. Looking at the game itself, and you mentioned recruiting, North Carolina has become the state of North Carolina has become more and more lacrosse oriented, I guess. Not near as much as it will be one day, I expect. But how about the recruiting aspect of it, needing or wanting to have North Carolina kids, but knowing that the mix of talent's usually north of here, if that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 kids from California. So we're kind of all over the map, which I think is fantastic, because everybody brings a little bit of something different from different parts of the country. But you can't teach heart. You learn a lot from Anson Dorrance, who was here for many, many years before retiring a year ago. And that's one of the things that he said is, you can't teach heart. They got to have it. They got to have that will, that desire to win and compete like heck. So doesn't matter where they're from. We're going to go after them. And certainly for the state of North Carolina, I mean, we have a starting attackman, Brevin Wilson from Charlotte, from the Cannon School. His brother is battling at the goalie position for us, Brayson Wilson. Kellen Moore is from Raleigh. So we have a lot of guys that, whether it's in the state of North Carolina or other, we're gonna find you. And it is a dream of a ton of kids to come to the University of North Carolina. That's pretty special when you go into their house and, make that home visit, and you're talking Carolina, and you show them a championship ring and so forth. And we also tell them the weather's not that bad, although right now it's not great.
I was going to say this is northeast weather around here right now.
Yeah.
Looking at 2026, and shout out to Jordan, your SID, for sending me these stats, because I always think these are relevant. You return a ton on the offensive side. You got to replace a lot of goalkeeper and defensive. The mix of returnees versus the freshmen you have in, just sort of tell us what folks can expect when they watch this team.
Yeah, I think when you lose your goalie, obviously I think we have a really good group of 4 goalies that are battling for the position. We add a freshman, Josh Marcus, to the mix, who was Connecticut Player of the Year. But he's battling with the other guys for that starting spot. We had a defensive midfielder in Caswell Friedman. We had a long stick midi in Parker McDonald, and then 3 freshman midfielders who made an impact in the fall. And sure, they're freshmen, but they're also built for this. And that's Luke Bear, Anthony Real, and Gary Merrill to the mix. So, and then Brock Geraci on attack. So I think we do have some freshmen that are contributing right now. Others are coming along. But as of now, those guys will be contributors. And then you look at some of the veteran returning guys. Brady Wambach at the faceoff X is first-team All-American. He's exceptional. You look at the attack position in Owen Duffy and Dom Petramala, both returning as juniors. And Brady's also a junior. And then you return Peter Toman off of injury a year ago to add depth to that returning close defense, which has been fantastic. So I just feel like we have the depth that maybe we haven't had in the past. with guys stepping up and stepping into big roles. So it'll be fun as we develop and grow through the course of the spring and see where we end up.
What's the biggest, not welcome to college moment, but the biggest adjustment for freshmen coming in? I mean, you said they're built for this, but it's still different being 17, 18 versus
Sure.
22, 23-year-olds. What's the biggest challenge for freshmen?
I say speed of play. The game is faster. There's bigger, stronger athletes than they had in high school, per se, just the depth of athleticism. So I think the speed of play and how fast the ball moves, and knowing, because these are all really, really talented players from their team. So there may have been one or two or three guys on their team, but the way the ball moves, it doesn't just take them to make the play. When you have 6 guys offensively and 7 defensively with the goalie, it's really important that they understand speed of play is one, because they all have the stick skills. But number 2, it's not just them. It takes the group of them to make it happen.
So if they said, and I asked Erin Matson this, and granted, it's a little different because she's a lot younger than we are. I said, if you got out there, could you still play? And she said, and this is a Matson quote, she said, hell yeah, Tommy. What if they asked you to get out on there and run with them? Has the game changed that much other than us getting old?
Hell yeah, Tommy. One of these days I might do it, but I have my Achilles intact and my knees are in decent shape. And, I might play crease defense and just kind of roam around the inside and cover the paint for Coach Petramala's defense. But outside of that, I don't know if I'm going out and punching the sky and trying to take the ball away anymore.
It's hilarious. I would be the tackling dummy that just stood there. And if you ran into me, that's the only way I'm stopping you. Coach, when you look at your schedule, you mentioned Towson. That may or may not happen with the weather this weekend. But, you need to build in your freshmen. You need to get them experience. How's the schedule shape up for you guys? Because I'm always fascinated by looking at these sports, because it's not loaded with the ACC, but you still play a lot of teams you always play, starting with Towson. Do you like the way it shapes up? And how much input do you have as a head coach setting it and getting it set, sort of built for what you need a specific season?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're in charge of our own schedule, and the ACC kind of schedules the ACC games, and we build around that. So for us, I think it's always how you set yourself up and start to prepare yourself for those April ACC games, the ACC tournament, and then the NCAA tournament. So we have a couple games where it's Friday, Sunday in preparation. We have a High Point and a Iona on a Friday, Sunday. We have a Penn and Princeton on a Friday, Sunday. And then you're hoping ACC tournament, long-term Final Four mentality. And that's just the mindset of Carolina lacrosse is, playing for championships. So, that's kind of how I set it up. We have 10 top 20 teams on our schedule, which is fantastic. And we have a great schedule. I mean, with Towson and Jacksonville to kind of kick things off before we go into that High Point, Iona, and then Johns Hopkins here. So really good February lining up, great schedule. And these guys love to play big games. And I think that's what you put them in, is those big positions to make plays and just have a great experience playing lacrosse here and preparing for long-term and what's ahead.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to let you get out of here. I know you got a lot going on, but I'm going to put you on the spot and talk about yourself. 2025 ACC Coach of the Year. How have you seen you personally grow as a coach, as the game's changed, as maybe any philosophies you've had has changed to result in a Coach of the Year award last season, and then having this team prepared for 26? How has Joe Breschi adjusted and changed over the years?
Well, you are putting me on the spot, but I got to say, any award, any team award, whether it's individual or coaches awards or player awards, it's all a team award, right? I have a great coaching staff. I mentioned them earlier. Just the great support of administration and the players. I don't. Over time, yes, the game has changed, but but it's really about recruiting. Some say it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. I'd say it's a little bit of both. But we've been fortunate enough. I put together a really good coaching staff. These guys are exceptional at what they do. They're so passionate about coaching and recruiting, and they do a terrific job at it. So, I'm a product of who's around me, honestly, and how the game has changed and how I've changed. Honestly, I'm a people person. So I'm a relationship driven guy with these players, and I've always been. That's never going to change. Fortunate for me is, we're able to build those relationships, to keep them and to impact 18 to 22-year-olds is why I do it. And learning how to handle success, learning how to handle the bumps in the road, teaching them to compete to their fullest. That's the beauty of what I've been able to do for all these years, man. It is an honor and a privilege every day I wake up to come and coach at the University of North Carolina. And you know that as well as anybody going to school here as well, that this place is so special and has so many special people within it, that I get a chance to bring kids to their dreams, to play here, to get a great education here, to be a part of this university for a lifetime. That's a pretty special thing. So relationships, it's all about relationships and people to me, and that will never change from when I started.
That's a great way to end it. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. Like I went there. I've sent my two sons there, and they earned it to get there. And it is just different. It's a different place, and that's the goal. And I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I did want to hear you talk about that, because I think it's important for people to understand that in a college era where it's all about business and the money and everything with the big sports, quote unquote, it's a lot more than that on the majority of campuses. And North Carolina has 28 sports, and 26 of them are guys like you, Coach. I appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing the season play out, starting hopefully against Townsend on Sunday, if you can play in a blizzard.
Yeah. Well, luckily we have a lot of Northeast guys, so
they're used to it. Not this guy, but I appreciate it, and thank you so much for your time, Coach.
Thanks, Tommy. Really appreciate you having me. Go Heels.
Shout out to Coach Breschi for joining me on the Inside Carolina Men's Lacrosse 2026 season preview. It's always cool to talk to the Olympic sport coaches, sort of a different view of college athletics from those coaches. Coach Breschi is one of the best in the business, and he has his 2026 team loaded up to make a run at the North Carolina or that NCAA national championship to go along with that 2016 ring we talked about. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com for sponsoring these shows. Look, you need to go see them on Franklin Street, go see them online, and get you 10% off if you're an Inside Carolina Premium member at Johnny T-Shirt. They support us for years. They support the Inside Carolina subscriber, and they give you that 10% and great customer service. If you're not a member of the Inside Carolina, of course, you need to go to that QR code on your screen or go to InsideCarolina.com, sign up for your premium membership. You get all the coverage of football, basketball recruiting, baseball, Jason Staples, Sherelle McMillan, Sean Moran, Joey on the Coast Crowd, Don Callahan football recruiting, Buck Sanders columns, just a ton of content and a ton of everything you need if you want to be up to date on the latest in North Carolina athletics. And then you got Greg Barnes, the best in the business, reporting on all the Smith Center deals and everything you can imagine Carolina related at InsideCarolina.com.